Florida. Everybody has been keeping their eyes on Florida with respect to coronavirus. I, in particular, have been trying to keep an eye on the data. However, with respect to a lot of the disinformation and misinformation that we're seeing, a lot of the things that we're seeing from Florida have revolved around Governor Ron DeSantis and his handling of the coronavirus in his state. One particular story came out this week from Florida Today, and it is titled Coronavirus as Florida Reopens, COVID-19 Data Chief Gets Sidelined and Researchers Cry Foul. Now, this was published on May 18th, so that was earlier this week. And essentially, the point of the article, and this is something that was highlighted by a particular Washington Post journalist by the name of Hamza Shaban. In his tweet, he wrote, "The data scientist who designed Florida's COVID-19 dashboard, a mobile-friendly, intuitive display of the outbreak, has been removed from her position because she refused to censor data and manipulate numbers to generate support for reopening," she says. And now this lady, her name is Rebecca Jones, if you haven't heard of her. She was one of those types of people, a whistleblower, if you will, within the Florida State Department of Health. And as I said before, or as at least was reading from before, she claims she was fired for refusing to censor data and manipulate numbers to generate support for reopening. The truth of the matter is, this is obviously an exaggeration and a misinterpretation of what actually happened. Jones was asked to temporarily disable the ability to export data from the dashboard so that it could be verified that the data matched other sources. Okay, so there's a ton of data out there. If you're not familiar with it already, there's almost too much data on coronavirus. There's data by state, down to obviously region and county. We're getting case numbers, death numbers, death rates, case rates, particularly per 100,000 people. You're getting hospitalization rates. You're getting recovery. There's too many numbers out there. And the important thing when you're putting out data and statistics is to get it right. I don't know what actually happened in the case of Rebecca Jones. This is what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had to say with respect to his defense of reopening Florida.
Our data is available. Our data is transparent. In fact, Dr. Birx has talked multiple times about how Florida has the absolute best data. So any insinuation otherwise is just typical partisan narrative trying to be spun. And part of the reason is that because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened. Not only do we have a lower death rate, well, we have way lower deaths generally. We have a lower death rate than the Acela Corridor, D.C., everyone up there. We have a lower death rate than the Midwest, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. But even in our region, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida has the lower death rate. And I was the #1 landing spot from tens of thousands of people leaving the #1 hot zone in the world to come to my state. So we've succeeded, and I think that people just don't want to recognize it because it challenges their narrative, it challenges their assumption, so they got to try to find a boogeyman. Maybe it's that there are black helicopters circling the Department of Health. If you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you.
Last question.
Okay, Ron DeSantis, right there, pretty vocal, pretty adamant, pretty defensive, and rightfully so. I mean, everybody was dragging DeSantis. His approval numbers went in the tank because of his decision to reopen. And people have been focusing mostly on case numbers and deaths as statistics to sort of impugn him, as well as Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Here's what the data is showing us. And I'm going to go to a publication that mostly everyone respects, and that's ProPublica. Let's just look at some data. ProPublica, trusted source by pretty much everyone, has some interesting numbers. So Florida, for example, they haven't had a stay-at-home order for 18 days. They have a low number of positive tests per capita. That's 0 to 5. In fact, if you read the data, it says 3.3 positive tests, saying that's increasing from May 8th to May 21st. All right, so that's, but not much. It's not increased a whole lot. Percentage of tests that are positive, that's been decreasing. That's at 2.6%. However, they have met the goal of having at least 100 tests per day per 100,000 people at 126, and their ICU bed availability as around 40%, which is above the threshold of the goal of 30%. But there is no data at the moment that I'm seeing from Florida, from ProPublica, about hospital visits for flu-like illnesses. That we would have to go possibly to the Florida dashboard that came under fire because of this Rebecca Jones story. Hospitalizations is at 9,117. Now, I can't tell if that's right now, because 9,000 people being hospitalized for coronavirus at this moment is pretty staggering. And they say that the total cases have been 49,000. I would imagine that's 9,000, over 9,000 hospitalizations total, because there have been 2,100 deaths reported on this particular dashboard. And I see no reason at the moment to believe that Florida is covering up their numbers, more so that they are trying to get it right. So that's that story. But people were taking with it and running with it, saying that, oh, Ron DeSantis is just leading a government cover-up, and that he wants to make himself look as good as possible. Like, already, I mean, guys, it's not like DeSantis has already been dragged in the mud already. I mean, censoring data will only make him look worse. If anything, if there's good data out there, or if the numbers show something that actually will help you, why wouldn't you try to show it? But look, obviously, I have no sympathy for politicians who are trying to cover up or make themselves look better. But I mean, right now, we haven't seen anything from Florida in particular, particularly hospitalizations, because hospitalizations indicate that if people are getting sick, if cases are going up, which apparently ProPublica states that they are, but hospitalizations are not, that shows that people are getting the virus, but they're not getting really sick to the point that they need to go to a hospital. In which case, that shows you that the virus, for some people, isn't as severe. You know, you have those asymptomatic carriers. You have people who experience mild flu-like symptoms. They might be younger people, or middle-aged people, but certainly not, above 70. And I can't think of any reason why this was brought out. It seems like it was a smear campaign against DeSantis. Now let's just look at Georgia for comparison's sake. Georgia hasn't had a stay-at-home order for 22 days, and they've had between 5 to 10 positive tests per 100,000 people per day. That's at least, not per day, I should say. They've had 5 to 10 positive tests per 100,000 people. Between May 8th and May 21st, that's around 6 people. That's been decreasing. What's also been decreasing are the percentage of positive tests that they've had. That's around 3.2%. And that's from May 8th to May 21st. They've been doing 184 tests per 100,000 people per day, and their ICU bed availability does not meet the goal of 30%. It's around 20%. However, the hospitalization data that we're seeing from Georgia is a lot more encouraging. And that shows between April 25th and May 9th, there has been a decrease of 1.8% in hospital visits for flu like illnesses, which is obviously a very encouraging sign. A lot more states are starting to show that as well. And I mean, like District of Columbia, you got Connecticut, you got Colorado. Those states are decreasing. Say if you want to look at my state of the state I'm in Virginia, Virginia has been ho hum. It's been okay. There's been a stay-at-home order for 53 days. There's been a medium number of positive tests per capita. That means 5 to 10 positive tests per 100,000 people at 9.9. Okay, so that's been increasing from May 8th to May 21st. However, the percentage of positive tests have been decreasing. It's gone down to 11% from May 8th to May 21st. There haven't been enough tests. 89 tests per 100,000 people per day at 89 does not meet the goal of at least 100. ICU bed availability has been around 31%. Hospital visits, that's the indicator we want to keep an eye on. That's been going down. That's down at 1.5%. Bottom line, Florida and Georgia were given the short end of the stick in terms of PR. And I think everybody can at least acknowledge that Florida and Georgia did a much better job in reopening their respective economies and have been handling the coronavirus pretty well.